Good morning, Brett Wilson.
A pleasure. Nice to connect.
You've always had a really good beard. I admire it.
Well, the light's not so good today, but in fact, Emily, can you bring those shades up a little because it's so dark in here? Um, I like having a beard. I like having a goatee, and I like being clean shaven. Problem is, I'm lazy, so I end up with a beard.
Do you remember the day when you realized you didn't have to shave anymore and that you were kind of the boss?
Yeah, that was a while ago. But in the three seasons I did on Dragon's Den, a lot of people don't realize this, but 1 year was clean shaven, 1 year was a short beard, and 1 year was a goatee. Completely
Uh,
different looks every time, but nobody really cared. They just wanted to see if deals were being done.
well, like I said, I really, really appreciate you doing this. The idea is just to have a casual conversation about entrepreneurship, and you being one, it's perfect.
Well, I'm happy to answer any questions or go wherever you want.
Do you remember when you first started to realize you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Well, that's an interesting question. I really didn't believe that entrepreneurship was going to be part of my life. As a kid, my mom and dad had bought a grocery store in Medicine Hat, Alberta, when I was basically just born, and things didn't work out. So my parents' experience in the world of entrepreneurship didn't go well, and so ultimately my mom ended up as a social worker. My dad sold cars at a car dealership, and he was pretty entrepreneurial in that sense, and certainly a gift at marketing. But mom, as a social worker, was a pretty conservative position. It wasn't until I got out of university, finished engineering, studied business, and in the business programs, I started to realize that the world of entrepreneurship was broader and deeper than I'd ever expected. And in fact, one of the first classes I ever took was, theory of entrepreneurship. And some people are going, "What do you mean the theory?" Well, there's a lot of things that tie the world together in the world of entrepreneurship. And I ended up working as an investment banker for 4 or 5 years. Absolutely loved that work, no question. But that wasn't into itself an entrepreneurial experience. But as I stepped out and partnered with my first partner, a guy named Jamie Mackie, my next partners, Grafton, Edwards, and Davidson, the world of entrepreneurship became all consuming, and there's absolutely no question. But again, I didn't start out thinking that way, and that's a big part of why whenever I get in front of an audience or a group of students in particular, I talk about the importance of studying three things through grade 1, grade 3, grade 6, grade 10, 12, and then whether you decide to be an athlete or a musician or a trade or a professional, doesn't matter. I genuinely believe that the study of marketing, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy will enhance who you are and your career. And my point about marketing is that, your first marketing document is called your resume. Your second marketing document in the context of entrepreneurship is your business plan. And understanding that those things have to be dealt with from a marketing perspective changes perspectives. You don't have to be active on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, and you don't have to be active on all of them, but you better understand how they're being used. You better understand how your competitors are accessing their clients through social media. If you choose not to, make sure you understand why, and again, how the competitors are going at it. And it can be a fascinating exercise. Reddit is all of a sudden in the
Yeah.
capital markets for no reason whatsoever, but they are. And again, if you don't understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, you could get burned. So the study of marketing is a pretty broad product, and again, it can be age age in the context of age. Teach what's appropriate. So grade 3, you're going to teach one thing. Grade 9, you'll teach another. But again, I still think that the idea of promoting yourself, because no one else is going to do it, promoting yourself, having a brand, having a feel, and again, not everybody needs to have a high profile brand, but you should have a distinctive brand because that's part of what gets you in terms of careers and opportunities. So marketing, entrepreneurship, and some people say, well, you mean study entrepreneurship? And I go, no, study entrepreneurs, study people who've gone before, and whether it's a Murray Edwards or there's so
The
many
Brett
founders.
Wilson.
Well, Brett Wilson kind of around, but there's the guy who invented pita pit, John Sotadarius. No one would know of him, But they had, ultimately, he and his partner had 600 franchise pita pits across
Mm.
North America. That's a pretty cool business. And you know what? They started in Kingston, Ontario, two guys, and they had three restaurants. They used to live in their car because they couldn't afford a hotel.
Yeah.
And that's how they got started. So, again, my point is to study entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurship. Out of
Mm.
that will come inspiration, will come ideas. The first case study I ever did in entrepreneurship was the study of some entrepreneurs. Who were they? Well, it was a group of union workers who were being laid off when the company they worked for, and what they made was the rubber handles that go on an escalator. That's all it was, just that big, long rubber handle.
Mm.
The union was shut down. The company shut down, but the union employees got together and said, look, we know what we're doing. We do know how to make this stuff. So they took over the business when it was shut down. And damned if they didn't start working overtime, damned if they didn't start understanding the value of
Yeah.
profit, if they didn't understand the value of their brand and the marketing that they were doing. And so this group of previously, again, a union mindset, which was show up at 9, leave at 4, you're done,
Mhm.
suddenly became entrepreneurs. And as I read the story about how they engaged, and suddenly, they had student training programs and they were community engaged and they were doing things that in their context as straight employees, as a union, they had no reason to think about.
Mhm.
So study of entrepreneurs, the study of marketing, then the study of philanthropy. I have tied my philanthropic journey into marketing and entrepreneurship. We've made money giving money away. And
Mm.
people think there's a little bit of hypocrisy on that, but people build brands and build business relationships. Thanks to I used to be with a brokerage firm called FirstEnergy. We were extremely proactive at giving money away, but it was strategic gifting. We only
Mm.
gave to clients, potential clients, past clients, spouses of clients,
Right.
but the word client was embedded in all of that so that we were building brand and building relationships.
Mm.
And some charities got smart and started going to our clients to say, would you ask FirstEnergy for money? Because it looks easy once a client asks.
Oh.
And it's fair. But I mean, we were dealing with hundreds and hundreds of charities simultaneously. So I never felt guilty if I had to turn someone down. We were doing more than most. In fact, one of my competitors said, it's so tiresome having charities come visit us after they visit you, because they say, oh yeah, we met with FirstEnergy and they're on side. Well, how does the next guy turn you down when
That's tough.
FirstEnergy, the little shop, has already said yes? So the thread that ties entrepreneurship, marketing, and philanthropy together is a gift. And
Mhm.
that's
Well, I actually, speaking of that, I read your book along the way.
an easy
So
read, no big words.
yeah, it was great. It really covers a lot of those points there. And I think one of the main themes of the book is that to be successful, it helps to be a little bit more rounded, and
Yes.
sometimes priorities need to be managed. Do you think you could have been as successful as you became without being very dedicated and working super long hours?
That's one of the great questions in terms of that trade-off
Yeah.
between personal life, family life, and work life. And it's, to be blunt, it's a challenge to balance. And, with hindsight, I wish I could have had a couple more evenings watching, my daughter play volleyball or my son play soccer. I wish I'd had a few more of those evenings. There's no question. You can't buy those back. So as much as I might sit on a building or an investment portfolio, I can't convert that to time.
Hmm.
So it's an understanding, and this is where I think it's so important. Going back to your first preposition, which was the study of marketing, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy, threading those together, and then ultimately making sure you understand what your life goals really are. And
Mhm.
the title of the book that you held up is Redefining Success,
Yeah.
and really the subtitle is Still Making Mistakes,
Mm.
but the bank or the in the book company I worked with actually at one point asked me if I would use Still Making Mistakes as the headline of the book.
Mhm.
And I said, look, my life's not that screwed up. I'm still making mistakes, but it's not the headline. And the
Mm.
real point of redefining success is to come back and start at an early age like yours and ask the question, what does success look like?
Mhm.
Is it just a big wallet? One of my daughters once said to me, why can't people define success by the size of their smile?
Mhm.
And that really ties to your question of the balance. You know, I'm sure there's a few entrepreneurs in the world who would give up an awful lot of what they have in terms of, call it financial assets, to get back time that's now gone.
Hmm.
So I think it really comes down to defining success early on. And if success is just money, then don't worry about your health. Don't worry about your family. Just run for it. But inevitably, people will look at a bigger picture. You know,
Hmm.
and sometimes there's careers that are short term, there's careers that are long term, and it's a matter of having a bit of balance in both. I'm 60 odd years old, 63 right now. My desire to take on new projects might be limited, but it's tied to charity, it's tied to events, it's tied to entrepreneurship, it's tied to family, it's tied to building things. I still enjoy what I do, and hope I lost my dad last year to a week before his 90th birthday. If I can be so fortunate as to make it to 90 doing what I'm doing, that's success for me.
Do any people come to mind in terms of someone who's balanced kind of career, family, having everything, it seems like, along the way?
Well, it's hard to know everyone's personal life in
Mm.
terms of that family and personal health balance. But certainly I've encountered people who, and certainly one of my priorities in life, if my kids called right now, I'd say goodbye and I'd be gone.
Yep.
But, um, you know, there was a guy in Calgary named Clay Riddell, and his family are just wonderful, wonderful people. The whole, but I always thought about Clay as someone who was focused on fitting business into his family life,
Hmm.
and that's that perspective of success. Now, did he make a bit of money? Was he away while he was making a bit of money? He was a gifted geologist, a gifted investor. Don't know what the trade-offs were, but I certainly saw him with his family a lot. And again, I admire seeing that sort of thing.
It seems like a lot of really successful people, like maybe you at one point, someone like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, he works like 100-hour weeks. It kind of requires that super dedication at one point, but maybe it's something you do for a short period of time and kind of taper off eventually.
Well, there's a trade-off for sure. There's some balancing, but again, if it's hard to, I mean, to be blunt, I treat every day as a holiday and every day as a work day.
Hmm.
I get stuff done every day, and some of it's family, some of it's personal. And the biggest challenge over the last decade has been to fit personal time, because I certainly put family was a priority, but my personal time. So COVID was kind to me in the sense that I went on a weight loss program and started working out with two trainers. Came
That's
down,
awesome.
came down 30 pounds in COVID. So pretty happy, and I've probably never been as fit. And the other problem, though, Dust, is that I've never had the urge to travel more. And of course, who can travel? There's just nothing we can do right now.
That may be a good investment when the vaccine starts to get out, is travel related stocks.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. I think people, the big airlines have been hammered.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge believer, just to, you dropped the hint, I'm a huge believer in the vaccine.
Mm.
Which one? Who cares whether you take two? You know, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. I mean, it's I'm a fundamental believer that the vaccines and the rollout of the vaccines is the key to opening our economy again.
Yeah.
All the lockdowns, everything else. Lockdowns are done entirely to make sure that our hospital system has room for the sick.
Mm.
Because you're not going to stop the disease, you're not going to stop the virus in any way, shape, or form. So all we're doing with lockdowns is trying to make sure that we have medical space. Well, we can't do that for 50 years.
Mm.
The vaccine's critical, and you get the anti-vax crowd. And with all due respect, you know, I travel the world, and I need to show in Southeast Asia, I need to show my yellow fever vaccine passport, as they call it.
Right.
I need proof that I've been vaccinated. You know, I've got every single travel vaccine that imaginable, from hepatitis A and B and probably C and Twinrex, whatever that is, and diphtheria, and on and on and on. I got them all,
Mm.
and I genuinely believe it's kept me healthier.
Absolutely. Just one more to add to the list, seems.
Me, it's just one more to add to the list. I've already had COVID, by the way, and
Really?
yeah,
Mm.
the symptoms were light, little cough, little nasal, little headache. But with hindsight, once I got tested 1 weekend, and then Monday I'm chatting with my doctor, and I'd gotten the results the night before, and I had had really severe fatigue for a couple of weeks. but I blamed that on a minor surgery that I'd had a month earlier, and recovery was slow. And so we just didn't really tag it. But I'm pretty sure that the fatigue was entirely tied to COVID. I was getting 12 hours sleep and wanting more. So
your dad recently passed away, and that's kind of a tough thing to go through, obviously. But what was the best advice he ever gave you?
my father valued a handshake. And in other words, your word, your integrity, that sort of thing was so important. And I watched my dad as a car salesman. He'd get off the phone sometimes at night and said, "Yep, sold another one." He sold a car over the phone, which meant someone's word or handshake meant something to both of them. So come on in tomorrow and we'll do the paperwork because we have to.
Right.
And I'm particularly proud of the fact that the people I've associated with, paperwork has to be completed. You got to do that. If either party gets hit by a bus, you got to have paperwork behind it. But quite often when we have to pull paperwork out, we're going, what did we agree to? Because we don't know.
Right.
It didn't matter. We had a handshake. We got the deal done. And I'm a big fan of I call it the prairie handshake. But that's all really from my dad.
That was a portion of your book I actually remember reading, was the value of just a handshake deal. And sometimes, like in the case of Warren Buffett, he would do huge deals just over the phone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, it comes down to your word. And there was times, for example, on Dragon's Den, many times I would do a deal on air, do our homework and go, oh, you know what? But fuck it. Pardon me, to heck with it. I'll write the check. And so I would write the check because I had a handshake backing it up. There was no commitment. The other lawyers, the other dragons had no desire to close on deals that they didn't feel great about. Well, if I'd done the deal on air, I really tried to do the deal. And that comes back to, there was a handshake that said, let's go ahead. So
One of the main pieces of advice you give with regards to entrepreneurship is marketing, but you're also an engineer by training and super technical and a lot of technical expertise. How important do you think it is to balance your product ideas and technical ideas with a good marketing plan and all that sort of stuff?
Well, there's no question you have to have some skills to bring a product or a service to the table. But unless you understand marketing, which ties to what's the lay of the land, who could buy, use, or consume your product, who are your competitors? And I can't tell you how often I run into people say, we have no competition. Well, yeah, you do. The world's rolling and spinning. There's stuff going on. Whether your product is unique, but is it the only way of getting to the end game? So it's a matter of understanding what your product does and how it competes in the marketplace. A lot of people talk about, let's pick a number. There's 100 million dogs in North America, and I just want to sell 1% of them a brand new leash. Well, selling 1% doesn't seem like much, or even 1/10 of 1%. But the cost of accessing the Canadian and North American dog market might far exceed the value of anything you'll ever make off of your leash. So the real point is understanding the gap between where you are and where the market is understanding your product or service, and then how to market it. And again, the word marketing is the impediment to success. Unless you're marketing, you're not going anywhere.
Right. When you're starting a business and you look at lots of businesses, which you've done, are there any themes that stand out to you on what makes a good business?
We need a passionate entrepreneur. And as I sometimes, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I talk about partnering with an entrepreneur who knew how to pick if you had to fork to the right or fork to the left. But I start to realize in the last decade that it's not just veer to the right or veer to the left. It's a sharp left turn. It's a sharp right turn. So as much as your business plan said, let's go straight, business plans are wrong usually by the second day.
Right.
And again, wrong doesn't mean they're wrong on product, wrong on service, but you've anticipated the market in an incorrect way, either underestimated it or overestimated it. It doesn't matter, but it's wrong. So you have to adapt. A fast growing business doesn't have enough money to grow. Who would have thought that was a problem?
Yeah.
Well, you can't afford to supply your inventory. You wind up your business. I had one of my Dragon's Den businesses was beautiful for sales. And then we realized that all the salesmen that had been hired were entirely focused on sales numbers, not profit numbers. The more we sold, the more we lost.
Right.
Inside of 6 months, the business went under.
Mhm.
And sales were exploding. So once
Right.
again, it's a matter of being able to adapt to the changes that occur and having some fun doing it. There's someone bought me a shirt yesterday, or was wearing it yesterday, that on the sleeve it says #NewPlan. And I've been working with several partners to build a restaurant in downtown Calgary. It's a rooftop outdoor restaurant.
Saw that.
Never been done before. Nothing like this exists in Canada, with a rooftop structure on the third floor of a building with shipping containers from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which was
Yeah.
a Dragon's Den deal. And one of my best friends, a guy named Phil Sprung, put the structure up. It took us almost 2 years to build. So COVID actually worked in our favor because I kept my construction crew working. They worked under COVID rules, washing, sanitizing, distancing, all that stuff. But we weren't interfered with. It was easy to park on the street. It was easy to get access to the trades and services that we needed. But the real point of all that is that we were constantly looking at each other. We had a drawing and we go, that doesn't work now. New plan.
Yeah.
The idea of new plan, we can make fun of it, but without the ability to adapt to new plan, you're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck in a rut, and you may not be able to go forward. But the concept of a rooftop patio, that was our original concept. But at one time, we thought we'd use trellises and barbecues. Well, if you see what we have now, it's a permanent improvement to one of the nicest buildings in downtown Calgary in the form of a outdoor patio. So just our willingness to take on and be creative at solving problems was necessary. So it goes back to left and right. We did a lot of left turns, a lot of right turns. 2 weeks ago, and we're almost set to open. 2 weeks ago, we just ordered 3 8-foot by 12-foot television screens. 3. And these are extraordinary. Well, we hadn't even planned on having these, but someone brought them to me used. They're a couple years old, got a really good deal. And we realized that with those, we had another opportunity to expand on, viewing nights, party nights, all sorts of adventure nights. So these are things like, here we are, we're 6 weeks from opening, and putting in 3 of the largest TVs that exist in a restaurant anywhere. We hadn't even thought about it. Hadn't even thought about having those TVs 6 weeks ago. And here we are all of a sudden with new plan. New plan is better plan.
Yeah.
We think.
Do you view that restaurant as a good business or more of a passion project that you're just involved with?
Well, promise not to tell my partners, but it's a passion project. For sure, it's a passion project. But we believe that this restaurant, post-COVID, will be one of the hottest venues in the history of Canada. In terms of restaurants with a vision for and a vibe for entertaining. So passion developing it. We genuinely believe that the people who are running it, which isn't me, my job was to get it ready, and the guys who run it are pretty excited about the door knocking in terms of people wanting to come in and use it, book it, whatever. So it's passion for me. It's a business for the others, and I think we'll do good on both.
I just finished reading 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And for example, he would call the restaurant business a terrible business. For instance, his view is that you need to go from 0 to 1, obviously, in the case of somebody inventing something, or maybe a 10x on something improvement, or else it's just not worth it. Do you view it the same way?
No, that's a purely financial outcome.
Okay.
The goal is to have a 10x. Bring it. I've had 20 and 30 X's. I've had lots of great returns. But my real plot, I didn't bring up any of them. I haven't even mentioned Tokyo Smoke, my first campus investment. But none of that really matters to me. I enjoy what I'm leaving behind. And, currently building a power plant. I've got 2 or 3 shopping centers, light industrial shopping centers I'm building. Those are long-term assets. One of my biggest investments was farmland in Saskatchewan. I don't need a 10x on farmland to be pretty happy with my farmland investment. So I get Teal's point. Restaurants are not as good a business but again, you take higher risk with startups. If you're chasing a 10x, you better be prepared for 0x.
Right.
And I got pages of 0x. I got pages of it. But fortunately, I've made enough money to pay for the 0x's, and that's why I have an office. And by the way, we have a backdrop here because early on in Zoom, I took grief for being in my office. We've always been in the office. We've kept our office open. And the reason? Well, we sanitize and keep our distance. We have no problem with it. But a lot of people shut their businesses down so they could all work from home. I gave my staff, there's a dozen of us, I gave us a choice. And do you want to come in and work, or do you want to stay at home? They all came in.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So now, with an apology, I got only a couple more minutes because I got to catch another call.
Okay, I'll ask a few more questions. You're really active on Twitter. Why, with someone like you, you're super successful. You don't really have to work. How come you do it? Why do you let those people get in your head? And do you enjoy it, or is it fun for you? Or
Interesting observation there is I don't generally,
either way, yeah.
I don't even read the responses. I just
Okay. I figured.
My goal is to provoke. Instagram, I'm going to promote the restaurant and my dog. It's friendly stuff. And on Twitter, I'm provocative. I'm provocative at the city level, the provincial level, and the federal level. And I'm using my voice and my platform to encourage thoughtful, or call it critical thinking in terms of why are we doing what we're doing. You know, today we're sitting here, we're regaling the political leaders over their decisions around COVID. And yet you can also find social media and news, mainstream media, doctors saying we have to lock down, and we can find doctors saying we have to open up.
Yeah.
So if the doctors can't agree, then why are we blaming why are we blaming politicians? And by the way, as a side rant, I think the time that was spent berating the traveling politicians was stupid. It was a complete waste of time. Should the politicians have been traveling? No. Can you or I name 3 of them who traveled out of 20 or 30? Probably not. You might come up with 1, you might come up with 2, but I doubt you can name 3. If that's the case, are those people influencers? Are they really influencing your decisions as to what you do? I doubt it. Justin Bieber got headlines for taking his wife to Hawaii, and people celebrated it. Now he's an influencer. Every one of us could name Justin Bieber as one of Canada's top musicians, but you can't name any of the traveling politicians. So they're not influencers. What should we have been doing while the headlines were focused on traveling politicians? We should have been locking down the elderly, making sure that the old folks' homes are better taken care of. What is it? 80% of the folks who've died in Canada come from old folks' homes. 80% over the age of 80, and that's not like no one deserves to die, but comorbidity makes it. You know, the other issues mean that you have to take twice as good a care of the elderly. Well, that's where the money should have been spent. And then secondly, and we'll wrap here, vaccines. You know, we've completely screwed up the vaccine process, and I put all of that on the federal government, who claimed, nope, everything's coming, it's going to start rolling out. You know, we're falling behind the rest of the world. And so here we are letting mainstream media and a bunch of people, and I've still got friends who go, oh yeah, the politicians shouldn't have been traveling. That's bull. That's just irrelevant as a sidecar. That's just a distraction. The focus, the elderly and vaccines, and then we can get our economy going.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Redefine success. It really comes down to, you know, my goal was, for sure, growing up as I did, my goal was to make a bunch of money. Did that, and then looked around and went, okay, now what? Redefine success.
You're always supposed to invert your thinking, and it's easy to give advice sometimes, but what would you do on the flip side? What would you avoid in business or in life?
People who take you down. People you can't trust. People who don't value a handshake. I have no problem with people making mistakes, but you've got to learn from your mistakes. I have no concern about, you know, someone saying, I don't know when I ask a question. But the quid pro quo for that is go find out and come back with an answer. I don't know is a great answer. I'd rather that than a half answer. So no, it comes down to people, because that's ultimately what you're working with all day long. And don't forget, your dog loves you no matter what you say and do.
Avoiding people, avoiding toxic people.
Exactly. All right.
That's I really appreciate it.
No, pleasure. Let's do this again in a year.
I would love to. Maybe I'll send you some coffee too.
Yeah, I'll take that. I love my morning coffee.
I'll get in touch with Caitlin and send you a bag or 3.
Make it a go. All right.
I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bye.